This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Recorded on Tuesday, June 11th, 2013, in St. Louis, Missouri. This Agile Life. Episode 17. Staging is a gateway drug. Welcome to This Agile Life, a podcast about what it's like to be agile in the real world. Joining me today are my co-hosts, Nate Mackey.
Hello, John.
Hey, Nate, how's it going?
It's going swimmingly.
You've got that deep, resounding voice today.
Oh,
even
yes.
though you think it sounds scratchy.
From allergies.
It's wonderful in St. Louis to have
right.
all those allergies. And over there on the right side is Amos King. Amos, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Just had a wonderful day. It's
Get
beautiful here in St. Louis, and nice and 98 degrees outside right now. So
Don't you know by episode 17 you have to get right up on that microphone?
I haven't been using this microphone, so
These
mine
are
I
the,
keep back about 10
the
feet.
new fancy microphones. And to my immediate right, Matt Corwell.
Hey, John, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Matt. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Been missing a couple weeks, but I was itching to get back, so here I am.
You came out from your underground lair.
Yes.
If you'd shave that beard, it might not itch so much.
That's what the doctor said, but nobody listens.
Okay, and our special guest tonight, guys, is Flo Matlick. Flo, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And did I pronounce your name correctly? That's the most important thing.
Pretty much. It is an O instead of an A, but that's much better than I heard from a lot of other people.
So, Matlick.
Matlick is perfect.
Awesome. Well, Flo, we're glad to have you here tonight. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm Flo. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of CodeShip. At CodeShip, we help people ship their software faster through continuous deployment and continuous integration. I'm originally from Vienna, Austria. Moved here to Boston a couple of months ago with the company and the team to work on that problem and just help people build better software faster.
Great. So no surprise, tonight we're going to talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment. I hope everybody picked up on our theme there. And specifically we'll talk some about how it relates to the product that Flo and the folks at CodeShip created. So one of the things that I wanted to know is I was reading and learning more about, well, why don't we talk about first a little intro into what continuous integration is before we get kicked off with the discussion of CodeShip. So, Flo, would you like to give us your definition of what continuous integration and continuous deployment are, since you're our guest? We'll give you
Sure.
the right of refusal.
Oh, sure, that's perfect. So basically what continuous integration means is that you always, whenever you change something, when you push something to your repository, be it GitHub or your SVN or wherever, you have an autonomous automated system running in the background that clones that repository and runs your tests that you've written through test-driven development, hopefully, but your tests at all, every time you change something in your application. The nice thing there is that you immediately know after a couple of minutes if there were any problems introduced, and instead of seeing and fixing those problems in a couple of weeks, maybe, when you run all the tests or maybe do manual tests, you have the automated tests and automated gatekeepers in place that always make sure that whenever you change something, everything still works. So that automated process is really important because people just forget to run their tests, or, every one of us is a developer. We all know, that's just a small change. That can't hurt anyone. And that's always the worst. And so you really need that automated system that just does stuff in the background without you having to care for it at all. And then on top of that, there's continuous deployment, which is basically the next step. So as soon as your test ran, as soon as your test ran, you can then take the software, take the latest changes, and immediately deploy them. The nice thing there is changing all your production environment. But the nice thing is, in our opinion, if software doesn't run somewhere, it already starts to rot. It's already getting bad because there's bug in there, there's stuff that you might not have tested or not have found, and just the process of deploying it helps you in just figuring out what can go wrong, what has gone wrong. Maybe something doesn't really start up correctly and you didn't catch it with your test. And also it helps your team because you can take a look at it all the time. You can see what you changed, how you can improve it, if that's okay, if you push to staging, or if you push to production constantly, you can get the feedback of your customers immediately and really work on that much faster than you can if you have a week or 2 weeks release cycle. So that's basically the two parts of continuous integration is running your tests all the time, and then on top of that, continuous deployment, just pushing out your code base, pushing out your changes to either your development team, to your staging application, or even to your production application whenever it changes.
Great.
Yeah, continuous integration is one of those things that as we were becoming Agile as a company was one of the easiest sells to all of our teams. The idea that rather than waiting around to see if everyone's code was going to work together at some point in the future, that you're just constantly looking at it and you're constantly evaluating to make sure that my changes didn't step on your changes or cause some kind of conflict or breakage. And I think setting up at the time it was cruise control was the tool of the moment. Setting up cruise control for your project or whatever tool you wanted to use was just one of the first things you did, and it's not even something we really had to convince people to do. It was such a great idea and so easy to get started, although maybe not easy to maintain over time. But it was such a great thing to be able to do that it caught on right away.
Yeah, I can recall even going back to before when cruise control was a product. In some of my very early Agile teams, I mean, we were getting separate PCs and setting them up as the build box, and then using a set of bash scripts or some sort of scripting thing just to continuously pull the repo and pull the code and build it and find out if anything had been broken or did everything still compile. And now we've evolved all the way to having all the great tools to help us out. So, Flo, why did you guys decide to create CodeShip? You didn't feel like there was enough. What problem were you solving by creating CodeShip?
Basically, as I should mention again, CodeShip, we're a completely hosted service. So it's what GitHub is to hosting your own Git server, basically. And so in all of projects and in the companies I worked at, I was always the guy responsible, or that was always my interest in doing proper software engineering, doing static analysis, doing continuous integration, making sure that the tests are there, and all that quality metrics that are really important. But it's work to set that up. It's work to get that into the company. It helps if you really want to go fast and want to go cut short agile cycles. But it's just work. Every single time I started in a new company or started with a new project or did it for university, and then I just decided that can't be enough, that there has to be a change in that. And at the time, GitHub and Bitbucket in their respective fields got more and more traction. So for us, it was clear that a cloud-based or a service for that will definitely be the future. So we started building our first prototype, had the prototype online in May of 2011, and then just basically had it sit there for a year, treated it as a side project. People were coming in through word of mouth and just giving it a try. And we used it to dogfood it from day one. So we're using obviously CodeShip to build CodeShip. And since then, so we started really doing it full time about a year ago. And it was just from my own need. It was just, we wanted to have something that really helps you in just getting better and just focus on what people do best, and that's building their product, building their software, and it's definitely not keeping their Jenkins server running, which was my server of choice at the time, which is a great project, but just, in our opinion, not really what it needs to be anymore.
Yeah, several times around here we've had the discussion about whether we should have a standard deployment or a standard build of your build server, a just out of the box VM or something that's ready to go with the builds that most of our teams would use. And we've always stayed away from that just because it really felt like it would take constant updates and constant care and feeding to be able to really get any use out of it, because it's not something you could just put up one time and be able to have work forever. So it's great to think that there's this service now that's doing all of those kinds of things that we wanted. We hated to see everybody doing the same steps over and over, but now you've got a service that's providing that and staying on top of it and making sure that the latest stuff is continuing to work.
One of the things that is completely unrelated to continuous integration, but is so exciting to me, is I love to see these projects that people do where they had a problem. I'm tired of setting up Jenkins over and over again. I could hear Flo just saying that, feeling that way as he was describing what was going on. And he's like, I'm tired of this. I'm just going to forget it. I'm going to build my own thing. And I love to see projects that come out of people feeling like, I have a need, I'm going to scratch that itch, and I'm going to create a tool or a technology or a process that I can market and sell and become an entrepreneur. Because you get to scratch your own itch,
you get to dog food it, like you were saying that you guys, Flo, you were saying that you guys use CodeShip to build CodeShip, and I think that's like just amazing. When you scratch your own itch, you end up with a better product, I think, in the long run, because it's something that's close to your heart and you're using it every day. And like the continuous deployment thing is really awesome to me, and I'm kind of pretty excited to get to that part of the conversation, but I'll stand back.
Actually, I think more and more that building products for developers is becoming more and more of an attractive market. And I mean, we know what we need in all of us as developers, and it's becoming more and more attractive. Developers, I think, more and more see that they want to use services. They don't want to do everything themselves. They don't want to. They use cloud services. They use other stuff. They really want to focus on the stuff that they like to code and not keeping an Ubuntu system up to date. So I think that's going to be even more in the future, where more and more of those services will pop up and help people just to focus on just their product and focus on what they really love to do and the code base that they really want to maintain.
So as I'm looking through the list, if we get into a little bit of the details about CodeShip, there's a couple notable languages missing from your list. I'm a Microsoft kind of variety guy myself. The first thing I did was try and spin up a C# app and take one of my current builds and move it up there, and I was sorely disappointed. But I can understand that a little bit, I guess. But I was real surprised to see the C and C++ weren't on there. What's your guys' plans for that? Is that just like licensing issues with Windows VMs, or how are you going to help those of us on this side of the aisle out? So
.NET is definitely, it's simply a problem of we need to start somewhere, and it's simply easier to start in Linux world, because that's where so for us, because that's where we come from. It's definitely, .NET is definitely on the roadmap. It's going to take a bit, but it's definitely on the roadmap. And in general, so our main focus is currently web apps. So that's why C or C++ is not really that much of a focus right now, because so in the long term, we really think that continuous deployment is a much bigger gain that people get than continuous integration. So running your tests constantly is an important part, an important first step. But and we've seen it with our customers. We've seen teams going from running tests all the time and deploying maybe a couple of times per week or maybe per month to pushing stuff 6-7 times a day. And that is, from what we've seen, the much bigger shift and the much bigger gain that teams get than just the test itself. And that's why we think that's what we really want to focus on teams and on software that can be pre-deployed continuously. And that's, as a first step, mostly web with cloud services, although we support various different, so you can run just your own scripts or anything. But we started with Heroku, Engine Yard, and now moving on to Amazon in general, and their Beanstalk and Opsworth, and going that direction. But so it's mainly web frameworks, web deployment. That's our main focus.
That makes sense, and there, like you said, there's different things to expand to, the Windows Azure services, and you deploy into the Windows cloud there's a lot of stuff to be tapped there, kind of like you said, like with the Amazon EC2 cloud and all those types of things. So I guess that's just when you get there and as it grows, that's reasonable. I can't be mad about that.
You can be, but it's not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
So Flo, what are the advantages of of using CodeShip over other things. Obviously, there's the very obvious fact that it's a zero deploy thing. I don't have to set up any infrastructure or anything on my end of the shop, and it's a cloud service that I can just wire into. What are some of the other advantages of CodeShip?
Yeah, so in general, so we see it, so when people come in, so the value that a lot of people see when they come in is simply that they don't have to maintain the server anymore. It just takes a couple of hours to set up and a couple of hours per month that you maybe have to maintain your server. So that's the initial gain you get, basically. But then over time, people move from, okay, now I got this service, now I got it in place, well, why not push to my staging server? So they push to the staging server daily, all the time. And then they slowly move, and we've seen it with some of our customers, they slowly move to when they don't just push to staging, but they start pushing to production more regularly, like pushing there all the time. And then you get into a cycle where, and I mean, that's all what Agile is about, is making those cycles really small, where you can get feedback from your customers, integrate it into your application, and work on the next thing, making this really, really fast. And we think that's the biggest gain, and that's what we've seen from people in general. Because continuous deployment, if you set it up yourself, if you set up your own system for that, people just don't do it. If it's not there, if it's not simple, if you don't have a nice web UI on that you can just click through and set it up and drag and drop it, the steps is set up, and you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to think about the back end there. You can just have it. People start seeing how powerful it is and how much they can use it, and that changes. So continuous deployment changes dramatically how people work, and so that's the longer term, really the longer term gain that they get, the longer term that they can get out of our product.
So what gain do you see people getting from the continuous deployment part?
Pardon?
What gains do you see your customers getting from continuous deployment? What are the advantages of continuous deployment over holding out for a while to a specific release cycle?
Yeah, the problem, especially when you begin with a product, but in general, so there's basically two sides to that. The one is the feedback from your customers. You can, if you have a problem in your website, or if you want to quickly change stuff, that can be a bug, that can be a new feature, that can even be a quick typo that you want to change in the future. You can, if you get some feedback from your customers, which is really important, you can very, very quickly react on that. Any feature, any change can be deployed in minutes instead of waiting for the time when the release schedule for the whole application. And basically, in my opinion, what is in the repository, if it's been properly tested, is always basically the best value that you can give to your customers. So the whole time between you've developed it and it's basically ready to ship to the developer has it in hand, that time you lose your customers and your users lose a lot of value, because you could give them a better product, but you arbitrarily basically don't, because you just decide on waiting out a bit for a larger release. And this time it's just lost. This time you lose a lot of value, you don't give the customers a lot of value, and which might be a decision factor why they can go to another provider or something like that. So that you should always give your customers the best possible solution as fast as possible, and that means that pushing stuff constantly and pushing it. And we've seen, so we release stuff a couple of times per day at least. So basically, so much we don't really think about it. It's just when it's ready, it's shipped. That's why when we get a feedback, when somebody tells them a typo or anything they need, we can just fix it really, really quickly without any hassle, and everybody in our team can just do that, which makes also every developer really happy. Because we wanna, if I develop something, if I implement a new feature, I don't want it in the repository. I want it in the hands of my customers and in the hands of my users. And so it's that to, when we're hiring and when we're looking for more people, that a lot of developers are really interested in that, really happy with being able to push stuff. And then, of course, if you do it all the time, it's just less painful. It's just everything is automated. You don't. If you know that it works 10 times, when there's a critical factor, it will probably work as well. So that's also, it just streamlines everything. It just makes it. It just takes the pain out of the process. just do it all the time without hands-on and nobody else having to be there.
So I think that generally we've talked about this before. We agree that continuously deploying is the positive. There are all kinds of positives there, right?
Yeah, like while Flo was talking, some of the things he said kind of popped into my head, made me think about the fact that a feature or a bug, they all kind of go through the same pipeline, where a lot of times in non-continuous deployment teams, you have a half-done release, which might be 5 or 6 features that you're hanging on to, and a bug report comes in, and you have to like circumvent all of that original code in order to get a bug fix into production, because you're not ready, you're not releasing all of this other stuff. Where if you're doing continuous deployment, when the bug gets merged and pushed to master, it's going out. So your bugs, your features, everything is going through the same pipeline, and you don't ever have a disparate connection between what's in your repo that's finished and what's in your repo or what's on your site that's finished. It's always the same.
And on a more granular level, there's something pretty satisfying as a developer. When I'm working on a feature, we're pushing something through, and Amos and I, we worked on a team together where we would deploy to prod after every feature, and any developer could push to prod, and I thought that was fantastic, and it really gave you a sense of satisfaction and kept things energized, because we weren't just putting stuff somewhere to rot. We were pushing it all the time, as opposed to other teams even recently where things get jammed up and you're, months of stuff all piled up waiting to go out the door, and that just feeds on its own backlog, and it can be really kind of demoralizing almost to have just this pile of stuff sitting there that isn't going anywhere. So that continuous integration really adds to that positive feeling.
We got a lot of customer feedback when we were doing that too, that they were really excited that they would mention something and 20 minutes later they would go to the site and it's different and done on like little bugs or tweaks to copy on the site. They were just amazed at how quickly that went out the door. And we actually had it completely automated with Jenkins for a while, which was pretty complicated to set up, and it took quite a few hours to get it going, and then even then took little tweaks once in a while because we realized, we didn't think about this and didn't think about that. So I like the idea of the service here, because you get all those little tweaks that we found. You now have lots of teams, lots of developers all needing all these little tweaks, so you don't have to deal with those tweaks because somebody else is taking care of it for you. And that was part of the reason why we didn't keep it going all the time, is because it started to just maintainability of the build system itself was such a pain that we kind of slowed down on it.
And Nate mentioned about teams doing similar things over and over. I spent today setting up a Jenkins server and going to the team next to me and going, hey, let me see your Jenkins server and I'll just steal what you have, because it's why we create the wheel, right? So, again, if there was a C# component to this, that'd be pretty cool from my point of view, and we could just use something like that, because there is no need to re-implement that plumbing. I mean, we refactor our code to have common things that are shared libraries. Why is the build really any different?
Yeah, it's very. I mean, especially when you in standardized environments like the whole web framework, everybody's using pretty much the same thing. You either MySQL or you use Postgres. That's much easier to take care of, and the whole setup is pretty easy or pretty similar in most circumstances. So it really doesn't make any sense to copy that from one machine to the next one, from one project to the next one. It's just a drag on everybody. And so what we've also seen is that, as you mentioned, the releasing something in 20 minutes. The problem that we often see with teams is if you can't just push stuff out in 20 minutes and a small fix, what you may do is you may put it on a backlog, you may put it somewhere, and then you have to keep track of that spot or that type in a matter of days or something. That's all something that you need to take care of in your project management. For something that really only takes 2 minutes to implement or to fix maybe, and then push immediately. So that there's a lot of overhead if you have to keep fixes in mind and can't just push them out immediately. It's just so much overhead involved that you can't just get rid of. You just push it all the time and let everybody on the team just change their application.
So If continuous deployment is so great, why are there so few teams that are doing it?
I'll say one thing. It scares the bejesus out of you, I think, initially, to have that sort of a door to, hey, if I put this into master, if I commit this to trunk, it's getting deployed. And I think that's one of the things that scares people.
It's a personal responsibility issue.
But so that's the positive side of it, I think.
I agreed, but that's part of what is scary. Yeah. You're now responsible for that actually happening rather than on this date some part of the team is amorphously moving this out.
I think that's actually the flip side of it. That's the very great part about continuous deployment is that it pulls that knowledge that I'm really responsible for the health and the quality of the code that I'm creating rather than I'm offloading that to someone down. I'm kicking it down the road. I'm kicking that can down the road. Yeah, DevOps is going to take care of that, or it has to go through the QA department first, and then it gets deployed. But it doesn't quite answer your question, Nate, but I think people are scared, really, and they don't see the flip side of the coin that it really puts the onus on the developer to make sure they're producing that quality code.
And one thing that we've run into is really the production environment, right? In consulting, when you're dealing with third-party people, there are some physical limitations on what they're willing to sacrifice security-wise or how much effort they can commit to getting something out the door, as we've all seen. And so that to me, that's where we have run into the biggest hindrances is it's not that the team doesn't want to do it, but like a client maybe not able to commit to it from a resources point of view.
Well, that's a problem that we've seen with people and hear from people all the time. Basically the same. It's the one thing that they fear going into it. And what we basically tell them is set up a staging environment, push to staging all the time. Because over time you see that your staging environment is up, the software gets better, you can access it all the time, everybody else on your team can access it all the time. And as you mentioned before, it forces you to just build a way better product and way better software because you have to have all the tests in place. You need to have an infrastructure that is easy to change. Otherwise, you will just blow up your application all the time. So it really forces you to bring quality into your software because you can't push all the time if you don't with high quality. But at least starting with staging, so in our opinion in general, so we consider deploying to staging continuous deployment as well. It's just important that it's running somewhere. It's important that it runs somewhere and somebody can take a look at it all the time. That's in our opinion the really first and important step because as soon as you're hooked to that, then you go into, after a while, to production as well. But I think it's making that first step to just push somewhere and let it run somewhere all the time where it's acceptable. That's also for agencies. Really interesting. Just to be able to, at least in your team, but also share it with your customers then from time to time in your staging environment. At least that's what we've seen.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I would definitely advocate for having a running version of the latest working copy of your application somewhere, if nothing else. I wonder, one of the things that you guys didn't mention about what stops teams from doing this, I think part of it that I've discovered is when there are barriers or obstacles, or when there are additional steps, I should say, every time you put something in production, there are this set of things that needs to happen, whether it's training, whether it's documentation getting updated, whether it's even my application is an iOS app, and every time I push it to production, I got to send it to Apple for them to review it before I can get it in the App Store. Anytime there's some kind of obstacle or some kind of arduous set of tasks that have to occur when you push something in production, it just takes away the joy and the appeal of having continuous deployment because you just think about, I've got to go through that every single time. It might even be like government compliance, like if it's SOX compliance, I've got to, every time I push something in production, I got to fill out 5 forms and file them somewhere, and it's the kind of thing that makes you want to hold off, do a bunch of things at once so you don't have to go through that pain over and over.
I think Apple would be pretty entertained if suddenly your build box started sending them emails with builds on it, that would submitting it to the App Store.
And it's interesting, Nate, because if that impediment is is constant. Like, I have to fill out 5 forms every time. I could see that. But one of the things that teams I've been on have buttressed up against is, like a security review. Like, is this code all good? So in that case, it's not constant. The longer you wait, the longer it takes to do this impediment to getting into production. And people still want to say, well, we have to do this thing, so we should bundle it all up at once. And I say, if we're going to spend 2 hours once a week or 2 weeks once every 4 months, I'd still rather get that feedback, like Flo said, sooner and quicker. But I really think a lot of it is, and this may be mean, but a lot of it is kind of like the last bastion of like the old guard in a way. Like, people just love a release date. They'll be agile all day. We can refactor. We can do continuous integration. We can do this stuff. But somewhere, somebody loves having, here's a date on the calendar. I know it's coming. Everything's going to be perfect. Like, people just are unwilling to give that up for some unknown reason. I don't know.
The security thing, or like people want to test it and things like that. For me, whenever I've been on teams that have had shorter release cycles or continuous deployment, is there's so much less to test.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Flo already talked about like staging being a gateway drug.
Well, first one's free.
If you have continuous deployment to staging and you test it on staging, then you just have a different branch that gets continuously deployed to production. Then you just don't move anything over until you're comfortable with it on staging, or until you've sent stuff out to Apple, or you've sent stuff out to the government for your compliance, and then move it over there at the last minute. And you can still let that automated system go ahead one last time, run all of your tests before it goes out to production, and you don't have to do anything except for swap it.
One of the things that I've been advocating for recently is to make a distinction between deployment and release. So that continuous deployment can occur, and then the business can decide when to release. You can do this via multiple environments, or you can do this with something called a feature driver, which is something that you enable via a console of some sort, where things are continuously deploying either into production or pre-production. People are able to exercise them with a beta site or pre-production site. And then when ready, you can work with the business to actually then make the physical release to a broader audience. So that's differentiating a little bit between deploying and releasing. Sorry, Flo, you were going to say something there.
Oh, yeah. Just on that point, we recently did a meetup here in Boston about continuous deployment, and had Dan Rowe, one of the engineers at Etsy. So he's in the developer tools team of Etsy, and they use feature flags extensively for everything. They just push new code all the time, use feature flags, and then let everybody on the team see it, test it, take a look at it, decide when it's ready to be shipped. Then they just flip the switch, and then that's it. That's the release. So they deploy new features all the time, but then when at specific times, they just turn it and turn it on for everyone, or for 5% of their customers. And I mean, they're obviously doing very well with it. It's their business. So that's definitely an option that is really interesting, especially when you get to a bigger code base, bigger customer size, where you can have the size to experiment. I think feature flags are really hard to do when you're a small team and we don't have a lot of resources. But as soon as you have reached a certain size where you can do more experiments, feature flags are really good.
You cut out on us there at the end a little bit, Flo. What was the last bit?
Yeah. So that feature flags, I think that for small teams, feature flags are often a lot of time and investment they have to do, and they don't get a lot from it.
Right.
But larger teams that have the resources to do proper testing, where you really want to see what performs best, pushing all the time, and feature flags is very, very important and very interesting. We can do proper A/B testing.
Yep.
A couple of things that have been rolling through my head on the more pessimistic side, or the more dubious side. What if any control do I lose, or ownership of my product do I lose by having CodeShip host my build? And when we were talking this amongst the team I'm working on now, and we're working on a third-party client software, the first question was, well, could we push their code to another third party? Is there any, issues there, any proprietary agreements. How do you guys deal with those kind of questions? What are, if any, the downsides to CodeShip?
Yeah. So from the control, so you definitely give up some kind of control over simply the environment we run your builds in. But for us, it's really important that through the setup, through how we present the setup and how we give you the control back, that it's really you who gives us like exactly the commands that should run and exactly what should be happening inside of our environment. So we always want to make that very clear. That of course, I mean, you're giving up some way of control, but just the same way that you give up some control to GitHub in that sense, or Heroku in that sense, instead of running your own thing. So it's not more or less. So if you, I think, especially to the second point, if the team and the people are fine with running on either GitHub, having the code on GitHub, or on Heroku, basically the same thing applies to us. Everybody has to make sure, of course, with their own, with the people they work for there, the teams they work for there. But in general, of course, I mean, we have our security and our privacy policy and all that stuff. So, of course, we never look at the code except for when we specifically are asked for doing support. And obviously, very big for us and very big concern for us. And we take a lot of time to implement proper security through all of our stack, our workflows, and to make sure that the system is safe. Because in the end, we have access to potentially your source code and your production system. So security is definitely a big issue for us.
Cool.
But that's in the end. The nice thing there is that we have to deal with it so much more even than anybody running their own system. That for us it is a matter of business. So we really put a lot of effort and man hours into that. In comparison to probably most people don't necessarily with their own system. Just putting on some servers and Amazon EC2 instead. So that's a big thing, I think.
Flo, I wanted to ask you a question specifically about the tool, because this has been something that I've been thinking about since I started taking a closer look at CodeShip. And I didn't find the information on the site, which is why I have the question for you, and it's about continuous, obviously with the continuous integration running of the tests, deploying of the code. If I've got a really active team and we're a large team as well, and we have a very large set of unit tests that we run, and it's a long process. Will those builds queue up, or are they running in parallel, or how does that happen if we have a series of commits that require then a build? How does that work?
That's basically our subscription. So it depends on the specific subscriptions that you have, how many builds you can run in parallel and when they're queued. And that's basically our way of growing the subscription with the company, because as soon as you just need more resources, the system also becomes way more valuable to your team. And that basically depends on the subscription you have, how many you can run in parallel.
What are the subscription levels, and what does it cost?
So currently, the current pricing is it starts at $9 per month. You get one build and one build at a time, and 50 builds per month. And the second plan is $25 per month. That you get 2 concurrent builds and 300 builds per month. And the largest one is 3 concurrent builds and 1,000 builds per month over the team.
I noticed on your pricing structure that you have a limit for how long the build can run. I actually think that's a good thing. I like the motivation to keep your build running quickly.
Yeah. Of course, so the limits we have are soft limits, so we don't just tell you, okay, this is now over, and you can't deploy any bugs. This is more to production. But it's will friendly make a hint that you might be over the limit.
Very kind. And what do you? And what's your? If you can share, you don't have to tell us the project, but how often does your most active project build, if you know? So
we have projects who deploy 6-7 times a day from other companies, and builds. So I don't know from the top of my head now, but with 6 or 7 deployments per day, it's, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 builds per day. I don't know off the top of my head, but we have teams who deploy at least couple times per day, and that is pushed to production couple of times per day. That includes oftentimes builds on feature branches as well. So it's quite a bit.
That's wonderful. And you said you guys use CodeShip yourselves. Have
Yes.
you ever experienced an outage as a result of using continuous integration and continuous deployment?
It happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know
happens.
GitHub has, right?
Yeah.
They've had outages.
Yeah, I would say that it's never happening. But the nice thing there is that since we are really, really big on testing, it happened only very, very few times over the last 2 years. And we were really, really, really fast in getting back to the state that it works again, and especially on our front page. And so that's a nice thing there, that even though we push all the time and we push a couple of times per day, the number of outages we had over the last 2 years are very, very few. Especially when you count the ones out that were Heroku had their problem. So I think that it really forces you to build a proper application, to test everything, to make really sure that your application works really well. So I think that is really important for us. Just to have that in the back of your head whenever you implement something, that it's going to be live in a couple of minutes. So you better test it and make sure it works fine.
And I find that we might have an outage as kind of an excuse, like, to not try it. Like, I'm so scared.
Yeah.
But companies who don't do continuous deployment still have outages sometimes because they push bad code. What I like is the nice thing is you roll back a commit in your repo and push, and you're done. It goes back, and then you can look into what it was. It's like fork a branch off of it and then roll back, and you're done.
Yeah, exactly. What most people do is just push forward. If you have a fix, if it's so small, when you push something an hour ago and then push something 15 minutes ago, the changes you did there that are so minimal that to find the fix and fix it is just a matter of minutes, maybe. So it's all about keeping the changes that you push really, really small, so that whenever something happens, you know exactly what the problem is. And we use a lot of feature branches for everything and merge back into master to deploy them. And it's often mostly only a couple of files. It's really important, I think, to keep the workload for deployment small. So it should be something that people work on necessarily. Then it, again, doesn't make a lot of sense, so just push it out there fast. And from time to time, of course, you have to work a week on something. But that's very rarely. And other times, it's just a couple of lines, couple of changes, and should be out quick. And if it fails, then at least you know very, very fast.
Amos, you and I have talked about this particular topic quite a bit. And one of the things that we've always gone back to time and again is you can't get good at something if you don't do it often.
Right.
And these teams where you release twice a year or 3 times, 4 times a year, I've been on those teams and it feels like you're throwing up a Hail Mary every time you go to deploy to production.
I've been on teams that do it once a month, and every time you go to production, it's like a stressful thing. And you know, you can get overstressed by comfort level too. So not just being good at it and learning, but having it successful over and over. You don't have that oh no feeling because you've been there, done that.
So can things go wrong when you're doing continuous deployment? Yes. But those things can go wrong when you're not doing continuous deployment. There are so many benefits to doing it. It's something that I think organizations should really challenge themselves to take a hard look at.
Well, Agile's all about feedback cycle and shortening that feedback cycle, and how much shorter can you get than coders' hands to production in 5 minutes. And like he said, like Flo said, you're probably not going to be pushing a huge amount of stuff if you do that. So even if you put in a new feature and you have a bug in that feature and you have to cut it off, the code surgery is what I'll call it, should be minimally invasive to fix it and very focused, because you know exactly what feature broke it, because it's only one went in, not 10.
there were 4 lines of commits.
Right.
One of them is the problem.
Right.
Even if you never get to the point where you actually get to continuously deploy, if you go through the exercise of setting yourself up in a way where you could do it, that forces you to do automation, which takes the Hail Mary feelings and the, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're about to push this to production feelings away, because you've gone through and done all of the homework, all of your work to set things up so that you really can push a button and send something into production. Okay, Flo, we'll give you the last word on the topic, and then if you have anything else that you'd like to share with us about CodeShip, and then we'll do our picks.
Thanks again for having me, guys. As you said, I really think that people should take a good look at continuous deployment, because it's a topic that's, especially with cloud computing, it's not just on the horizon, it's here. You need to take a look, because other people are looking into it, competition is looking into it. It's just a better way to work and a better way to build software in the future. And when you're at a point where you can't just go, like right before you leave the office, you just push a new release, and you know it works because it worked the last 10 times today, it worked the last 20 times this week. It's just a way more relaxed feeling. It's just a better way to work when you can focus on really what people do best and what they love, and instead of fear that they broke the application again. It's just much nicer to work like that. And of course, I'd love for people to try CodeShip and give us all the feedback they got. And you can also, of course, just send me an email, read our blog. So we have a regular blog post on every Tuesday, a Testing Tuesday, where we introduce different topics with a screencast. So would love to have people take a look there and just send any feedback they have our way.
Wonderful. Thanks, Flo. We'll come back around after the picks and give you a chance to give us all of your contact information. But let's go ahead, guys, and do our picks now. Amos, why don't you go first, man?
So I only have one listed in our document, but I actually have 2, but I can't get to the internet. So you talked about us learning and growing, and that we can't get better at things if we don't try. So I've been pair programming for about 6 years, and I want to get better. So, and especially being remote now, I have a whole new way of pair programming to learn. So I have 2 pairing picks. One is airpair.co, where you can go get paid to remote pair with people, or you can pay to remote pair with people in all kinds of ranges of price, and it's been pretty cool. And then the other thing is their Twitter hashtag pair with me, and you just throw it up on there on Twitter whenever you want to work on something. There's a lot of people tracking it, and people come and pair with you. I have been trying to remote pair with somebody at least once a week for 2 hours. It's really ended up being like 3 or 4 times a week for 2 hours. So it's taking a lot of time, but it's fantastic because these are people I don't know, I've never worked with. I'm jumping on and talking to them, and I hope that I can, at the end of the year, turn my experiences of 6 years of pair programming, co-location, and remote pairing with people from all over the world into a great
book deal.
talk. Huh?
A book deal.
A book. Well, I don't know if I can write a 15-minute talk. I'm not sure I can write a book more than about 10 pages.
I'm so pissed
Those are my
off
favorite
about,
kind.
I'm so pissed off
What?
about this air pair thing, because I had this idea 2 years ago
You
and I
did.
did
I
nothing
remember.
with it. Yeah.
You didn't capitalize. You didn't get it to the end
Thanks,
zone.
mate. Thanks.
Yeah,
for,
That's
I
right.
remember.
If
Thanks
you
for
had
remembering
continuous
that.
deployment,
Yes.
you might have gotten it.
I'm with you there.
I have prior art. I can sue
That's
these
right.
guys or something, right?
So get out there and practice. Get out there and pair with people, and maybe try to find somebody to pair with that does continuous deployment, so you can pick their brain while you're working.
Sounds like a good idea.
Good picks, Amos. Matt,
Thank
what
you.
are your picks, man?
I've got 2 picks today. One is similar to a pick I've made before, but it's just more information on it. In that same vein of learning and refining what we do. From a developer's point of view, it's a blog on 8th Light by a guy named Micah Martin about performing code katas. We've talked about that a number of times. Several of the teams we've been on recently, we've actually got people doing weekly team code kata just for the exercise of doing it. A lot of people have said to me, well, how do I do that? How do I start doing that? This particular article is a little more of the mechanics of here's some tips, here's some ideas, here's some ways you can get into the habit of doing this. And so that's just a different take on something we talked about before. And the other one, kind of as a corollary to what Amos said, is an article about pair programming being one young programmer's nightmare and how it's the worst thing in the world. I don't usually go with the negative side of stuff, but I thought at the very least, maybe reading this, I read it, I thought, you know what, as I pair with people, maybe there are things that I need to be more attentive to, or as a developer I can improve my pairing skills by being more aware of what things maybe people do have issues with. So even though I think this particular article is pretty far out left field, maybe we read it and get some dissenting views and help us kind of recenter ourselves.
Can I say something real quick? Just because you said young programmer, one of the guys that I paired with was 14 years old. It was absolutely amazing. He started programming 3 years ago, he said, and I had no idea. We set it up through email and Twitter, and I never really looked into him, and then we went to pair on Google Hangouts, and he's like, oh, it won't work because I'm not 18. And I was like, how old are you? He's like, 14. But it was awesome just to be able to work with him and be able to give back to the community like that. Sorry. I didn't mean
that's pretty cool.
You just said young pair programmer in it.
Yeah. I don't know. This guy that wrote the article may be older, but
him. He might hate me.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's why he wrote it. It's from today.
Matt, you know what I think, and I this is another idea I had, and I'm hoping maybe you'll do it because I'm too lazy at this point to do it. But I think you should start a coding dojo in St. Louis.
There you go.
Yeah, an actual physical one because I've been working on. I have a GitHub.
Doesn't have to be physical.
Project for
leg.
I have one in progress. In theory, it's not been touched for about a month and a half now, but
I think it'd be good to get people together and do the coding katas.
Sounds like I ended up hanging out with a lot of weirdos.
It sounds like you would be hanging out with a lot of weirdos.
Yeah,
you do that every day.
You do that already, right?
So we're good to go.
Okay.
That's the wrong industry you're in.
Thanks, Flo.
Flo, what are your picks?
So my picks are, for once, Docker.io. So we use Linux containers a lot for all of our virtualization. And Linux containers is a bit hard to do. But Docker.io just makes it really nice, really easy to do any kind of virtualization on any Linux machines. It's a great tool, and I think everybody should check it out. And the second is I just started reading a week ago, the Phoenix Project, which basically is a novel about an IT management project, and explains how the authors see IT management, how to transform a team from very dysfunctional into a high quality team as a novel. And it works really well, and it's really fun to read. And you'll see, like, especially as IT does, it's a lot of things where you, okay, I know this kind of person, I've worked with them. And I know this problem, I had that as well. And they put it in a really, really nice story. So that's very enjoyable.
Have you finished reading that book, Flo?
I'm now nearly. I'm not completely through, but I'm nearly through.
I'd love to get a recommendation from you when you're done reading it. I love this idea of communicating thoughts, ideas, and actually providing somewhat of a mechanism for training through a novel form. There's another book that Brian Button always is talking about, Critical Chain, I think is from a guy named Goldratt, that is a novel, is in that novel form, and it's just so consumable. You know, you get tired of reading technical manuals and blog posts, and it's neat to have something that's entertaining as well.
Absolutely, especially the first half was really, really captivating, and I'm now like 90% through according to Amazon, and it's really great, really interesting. So I think the way they explain it and with that story is like people see themselves in these characters, I think. So that works perfect.
That's cool. I'll do my pick real quick. Something called the Agile Link, talking about communities with a dojo, but in St. Louis we've got an Agile Link that meets every other month, and the every other month meeting is coming up. It's this week. It's June 13th on Thursday night from 6 to 8:30 p.m. It's at One Savas Place in West County, and I'll have the link in the show notes. this time around they're talking with product owners and getting product owner perspectives on just being a product owner for an Agile project. So if you're in the St. Louis metro area, you might want to check it out. Nate, what's your pick tonight?
My pick is a video. We grew up Agile under extreme programming, and I think if whatever the opposite of a fanboy is, I guess a naysayer when it came to Scrum. We always felt like Scrum it didn't do the job all the way through, that XP had all the pieces to it, but Scrum didn't carry the job all the way through, and you ended up with not having the right coding practices to go along with your Agile planning. But I think after years and years of doing Agile, I've come to the conclusion that Scrum's got some things right, and there's some aspects of it that make a lot of sense, and some roles that we haven't specifically outlined on our teams that we should think about. And so there's a great video by Henrik Nieberg called Agile Product Ownership in a Nutshell that just does a really nice job of explaining what a product owner is, what they're supposed to be doing on the project, and by the way, explains a lot about Agile in general and how it works. And we've been showing this video in some of our classes, and I've been telling other people around here to watch it, just thinking about. So maybe I'm kind of lobbying for a future of this Agile Life podcast about the product owner and what that role is about and how you do it right. But maybe this is homework for our listeners out there to watch this video first and help us think through that problem.
Great, that's a good pick. I can't wait to watch this video a little bit later. And you did a wonderful job with that name. I'm sure I would have butchered it. And
well, I've met him. He's a very nice fellow.
Did Flo help you out with the pronunciation on that? Okay. Guys, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to give a special thanks to you all for joining us tonight, especially Flo Motlick from CodeShip. Flo, where can people find out more about you and more about CodeShip and everything else about you?
Go to CodeShip.io, give the system service a try. It's just a matter of minutes. Then our blog, we have, as I said, we have regular blog posts about testing Tuesday, where we just introduce people to testing. A blog post about deployment with Heroku, how you can be more efficient with that, and there's a lot more to come there. And my Twitter handle is @FloMotlick, so that should be rather easy to find, I guess. And the pronunciation was really perfect now. This time it was really well.
Good. I'm glad I got it right in the end. And Matt Corwell, where can people find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter occasionally at Matt Corwell, Korwl, and that's about it.
So excited.
Keeps a low profile.
Nate, where can people find out more about you?
Well, best place for me is also on Twitter. Twitter handle is Nate Mackey, Natemckie. I also post occasionally on Asynchrony's blog. That's the company that I work for. Asynchrony is ASYNCHRONY.com. There's blog.asynchrony.com where you can find some of my posts.
So, Nate, last time you said that you weren't ready to show the world your GitHub account address. Are you still holding out on that?
Yeah, I need to go in there and take a look at it. I think
remove all the cuss words.
I think I've done some pretty. I think I've done some pretty embarrassing stuff in there. Although Git, you can't really cover up your embarrassment totally, I guess.
No.
Amos, where can folks find out more about you?
I can be found on Twitter or GitHub at Adkron, ADKRON. You can find my blog, dirtyinformation.com, which is moving along swimmingly. I have a pair with me tag up at the top that you can click on and email me if you want to jump in on those pairing sessions. I would love to pair with every listener out there. That would be awesome.
Wonderful. And you guys can find out more about me, John Sextro. You can follow me on Twitter at JCSextro, or you can visit my website, johnsextro.com. I'd like to give a special thanks to Dr. Lee McCauley, our audio engineer and post-production guy. He did quite a job tonight to get everything wired up and get us connected to Flo. Thanks, Lee.
Woo!
Special thanks to Rich Johnson for the intro music, Dan Schwabe for the outro music, and Flo, once again, thank you very much for joining us. It's just been a real pleasure speaking with you and talking about continuous integration and continuous deployment.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, thanks for listening. Be sure to check out our website at thisagilelife.com to find the show notes for this podcast, and keep living this agile life.